Just wanted to say a few words ahead of this video because these videos come off the back of a huge lot of Eaglemoss Star Trek ships that I picked up recently. And so I've put up all the duplicates on eBay for you to have a look at, and I'll include links around and about the place. So if you've got any sort of interest in getting hold of a few of these to have a look at them for yourself, you can do so for a while at least, because it looks like they're not going to go flying off the shelves. I've tried to price them quite reasonably, so do please go and have a look. And without further ado, I will get on with the main video. Cheers. Now, this little ship, and I'm afraid, yes, Worf, if you were commanding it, it would be a little ship, nevertheless packs an impressive punch, because the Delta Flyer was constructed by the crew of Voyager, who seemingly had an unlimited supply of shuttlecraft anyway, but on this occasion needed a particularly tough little ship to go into a gas giant and rescue I believe it was a multiphasic probe, before the Malon got hold of it. So it was a bit of a race against time to actually construct the Delta Flyer, and Tom Paris had this idea for a while apparently, but this need sort of spurred them on to actually create it. And it's a bit larger than a typical shuttlecraft, but smaller than a Danube class runabout. And I'm kind of quoting from the magazine here. But it was very unique, as you can tell from this little bit of green here, in that it incorporated Borg technology into its design. It had these funky little pop-out warp nacelles, which I'd forgotten about until I read about them in here. And it also had, in a later version, little sort of pop-out impulse engines as well. It had phaser strips all over the place. It had little mini photon missiles that it could launch. And it also had these really sort of quirky flight controls that were basically deeply old school, literally, because they were sort of antique conventional analog flight controls that Tom Paris fancied putting into it because he wanted to make it look like Captain Proton's ship. So basically it's a really heavy duty shuttlecraft / ancillary craft, and you kind of wonder why they wouldn't have just swapped out all of their shuttlecraft for this kind of craft, because they did produce another one, because this first one got clobbered by the Borg, appropriately enough, and it was able to go underwater. They modified it for that. It could deal with sort of heavy gravity situations. It was a really, really tough little ship. Completely CGI, so there was no physical model of it, I don't believe, at any point. There were just sketches, which you'll see in a moment. But it just allowed the flexibility to have members of the crew in more than one place at a time. I mean, they could have done that with conventional shuttlecraft, but this just gave them a bit more zip. It allowed them to hide from the Borg when they needed to at times as well. All sorts of little side stories that they could do, which they couldn't otherwise have done without having a ship like this available to them. And apparently it was interesting because this was back in '98 when they did this, and you can see it's quite a curvy ship. It's a cool ship, as Tom Paris would have put it. But doing the curves and getting some of these panels onto the curved hull sections for the CG of the time was actually quite challenging, apparently. So they could probably do it far more easily these days. But they had to sort of push the limits a little bit and use some tricks to get it to work. And it's interesting, on the side of it, I think it's actually got Voyager's NCC number on the side. Shuttles tended to do that. I remember the Next Generation shuttles generally had 1701D on the side of them, just to delineate who their mothership had been. So you can see that Rick Sternbach designed it, and there's some loads of sort of design sketches here for it. I'm not sure if that's the navigational deflector on the front there, or if that's actually that sort of where the little missiles are supposed to come out of. I'm not quite sure. We can see these sort of various iterations it went through, and it's very cleverly done because you just get these little sort of subtle hints that there's something Borg about it. I can't remember exactly which bits were Borg, but I mean, it's described as having Unimatrix shields, which I thought were a Borg thing, but then it says that Tuvok came up with those, so I'm not quite sure what the crack was with those. but it had a sort of med bay. It looks like it was designed to have an after ramp from the looks of it. So it's quite, it's quite chunky as shuttles go, but as I say, it's between a shuttle and a runabout size-wise. I mean, I'm not even sure how big Voyager's shuttle bay really was, but obviously they do show it being constructed internally. Here are the warp nacelles popped out. You can see from the stars that it's going at warp there. But it was a very, very cool looking ship, and it was this guy Rob Bontune who's responsible for sort of bringing it to life in the show, and he added the various sort of lighting effects and so on to try and sort of bring it to life a bit more. And he participated in this this sort of race with some other little shuttlecraft size ships, but it had to eject its warp core to avoid getting itself blown up because someone had sabotaged it. So that would have been unfortunate. So it first appeared in Good Shepherd, and was also in that episode Drive, which is the one that features the race, which is I think there's a fully at impulse race as well. So warp speed didn't really enter into it, but yeah, I mean it's interesting that they chose to make it such a signature ship above a normal shuttlecraft, but I guess it just gave them something else sort of cool to play with, for want of a better description. But you would think that Voyager would have benefited from using shuttlecraft almost in a sort of escort role a little bit more. Why not use them as fighters? Because it did get hammered quite a lot of the time by ships that were smaller than it was. But anyway, it's too late now because they're back. So there you go. so that's the Delta Flyer. Let's have a little look at the model, which should be quite a nice, easy, solid one for them to do, because there aren't any massive sort of changes, there's no nacelle pylons or anything like that to worry about with this one, so it is what it is. Let's just pop her out. This isn't one that I've had before. I've actually got a large one of it, and the large one is hilarious. The large one is actually virtually the same size as the XL Voyager, which always makes me chuckle. There we go. Yeah, she's quite a nice weight actually. I think there's definitely a bit of some metal in there somewhere, but it is very much a sort of what you see is what you get, because it's very, very solid. It's a single piece, as you can see there. It's still very, very nice detailing. There's a reference to the ship registry all over the place. You can see it's there as well. So it's nice. It's nice. It's a great little shuttlecraft. It's very, very cool. Almost looks as if it could go backwards as well as forwards when you look at it. It could go that way. But yeah, it's got good visibility. It's got better than average visibility for a shuttlecraft actually out of the front of it, which is, again, it's one of those things with spaceships. It's like, do you need windows? Should you have windows? Because windows are inevitably a weak spot in your overall sort of design motif. So it is kind of debatable whether or not that's a good idea. So I think the overall shape was pretty much identical between the first Delta Flyer and the second. The second had slightly modified flight controls, I believe, and I think the interior was remodeled slightly in it as well to try and make it more comfortable. But otherwise, they were essentially the same ship, and that makes perfect sense to me. Why would you reinvent it when you've really just come up with it in the first place, really? But it just goes to show that Voyager had a lot of resources beyond that sort of first couple of seasons where things seem to be scarce. All of a sudden, they can knock up Delta Flyers. And in fact, it's probably worth mentioning at one point it actually had transwarp capability, because they were able to take a transwarp coil from a damaged Borg ship. And although Seven then got sort of kidnapped by the Borg, they were able to use that transwarp coil to get to Unimatrix Zero, I think it is, isn't it? And then and rescue her using the Delta Flyer and using some of the sort of shield adaptations they picked up on their travels to mask themselves from the Borg. In fact, that was probably the episode in which the Raven's shield modifications were used, as I recall. So there she is on a stand, displays really, really nicely. Obviously, it looks like she's about to sort of lift off on the stand, which is I think that the Eaglemoss often like to try and do with the ships like this. And there it is. So yeah, as a sort of small scale version of it, it's really good. I'm saying I like the XL version as well. It's a really nice, big, solid model because its proportions fit really well inside an Eaglemoss box. So they just kind of filled up most of the space with solid model, which is nice. But there it is. So that's that one. I would say I'm about halfway through-ish of the whole ones I had to run through with you out of my job lot. So I'll try and keep this up and try and keep going daily. But that means I've got another sort of week and a half yet to go churning these out. And if you could see the room this is sat in, you can see it's filled with empty boxes and models looking for a home. So I need to figure out where I'm actually going to put them all after this. But that's a job for another day. Cheers for now.